What's up, everybody? Hey, Tom Laird here, host of the Advice from a Call Center Geek podcast and founder of Expivia. For exceptional contact center outsourcing, trust Expivia. We're fully AI-driven, as all of you know, and can handle voice, email, chat, and all of your digital channels. Our 600-seat USA contact center is expert in healthcare, financial services, insurance, tech support, retail, and more. Experts on the NICE CX1 platform, we ensure seamless customer experiences. DM me or visit expiviausa.com for more.
This is Advice from a Call Center Geek, a weekly podcast with a focus on all things call center. We'll cover it all from call center operations, hiring, culture, technology, and education. We're here to give you actionable items to improve the quality of yours and your customers' experience. This is an evolving industry with creative minds and ambitious people like this guy. Not only is his passion call center operations, but he's our host. He's the CEO of Expivia Interaction Marketing Group and the Call Center Geek himself, Tom Laird.
Welcome back, everybody, to Advice from a Call Center Geek, the contact center podcast where we try to give you some actionable items that you can take back to your call center to improve your agent quality, to improve your culture, and hopefully improve the customer experience as well. My name is Tom Laird. I'm the CEO of Expivia Interaction Marketing. Expivia is a 500 and rapidly growing here to hopefully a 600 to 700 seat contact center outsourcer located in beautiful northwestern Pennsylvania. Thank you again for joining us here on the 11th of April. We've had a really, really busy week here at Expivia. So, I want to do a couple, I think, kind of unique things on this podcast episode. We've had a couple client visits and some potential client visits. I've been traveling a little, and I am preparing now for NICE InContact Interactions, which is the NICE InContact user conference. That is all next week for me in ARIA in Las Vegas. So we're a silver sponsor. I'm going to be speaking 2 times as well, once on the omni-channel track and another one on the speech analytics track. And then really excited to stay after everybody leaves the conference for another day or so for our ICVC meeting, which is the NICE InContact Visionary Council, which I am a member of. So really get to be able to see the roadmap for the next 18 to 24 months from a technology side, from what NICE InContact is planning and getting our opinions on some of the newer technologies that are coming out. So I'm going to have I think a really neat episode. I hate that word, but a really cool episode in 2 weeks for you when I get back from the conference next week, where we can really talk about some of the next level technologies that will be coming out and some of the things to start to prepare for. But I wanted to keep this lighter as I'm, again, just preparing my speech and kind of getting ready for all that and take a trip down memory lane. I wrote a blog post for the customerthink.com blog site. And by the way, if you do not subscribe to that or you do not look at that every day, that's a mistake. If you are anything to do with contact center, with customer service, customer support, you need to check that thing out every single day. There's just articles that are in there all the time that really help, and it's a really awesome reference point for anything related to the contact center. But anyway, I wrote a post yesterday or the day before on looking back at the call center when I first started and started really kind of being involved, and that's back in 1985. For full disclosure, I was like 9 or 10 years old, but my family owned a call center. My brothers and sisters and I, we really all grew up there. So after school every day, we'd be at the call center from 3 o'clock to when my parents left, and the call center people and those employees really became like our second family. And being there, you had to do some work. So we picked up some jobs as well, and I wanted to kind of talk about that and kind of take that stroll down memory lane and love to hear as well, anything that you guys would have if you want to, head over to the Advice from a Call Center Geek Facebook page when this is over. Because I know that everybody's got some really cool stories of kind of what things were like back in the day. And back in the day can be even, like 2000, 2005, because I know a lot of things have even changed since then. But let's take a kind of a look in I guess through my eyes of kind of what I remember. These are the days when outbound calling was huge. This is before any type of advanced telephony, any skills-based routing. There's no computer telephony integration because we didn't have a computer, right? All we had was phones. This is the time when fulfillment was big, stuffing envelopes, typing scripts. really creating paper scripts and how that evolved and how you do rebuttals. Those things we had to really kind of think out. So in 1985, the call center that my family owned, we worked mostly for financial institutions. We did a ton of outbound credit card. This is kind of the heyday of credit card sales and credit card marketing. And a lot of the banks were trying to figure out how to boost their credit card portfolios and how to sell this, this newer concept of the credit card. So it's funny, by the time I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I knew what an APR was. I knew what a grace period was. I probably had more financial background than most kids my age. One of the things that, my job was as well was to make sure that we were in compliance with the very loose TCPA regulations. Now, when I say make sure that we were in compliance, I mean, I don't think they'd really let a 12-year-old kid be the person that's totally doing that. But my job, which I think was really important, was to color code all of these pressure-sensitive labels that the reps called off of. So what we would get these giant spools, like literally they were like giant rings of data, and we would put them onto our machine, and our machine would spit out these pressure-sensitive labels that they would print out on. And so the reps would each get a sheet of these, and they would literally, dial the phone number that was on them. And if they got a sale, they would unstick the label, put it onto a paper application, and then with a pen, or I believe it was just a pencil at the time because we didn't want to make any mistakes. With a pencil, we would then fill out the application with the customer on the phone. So my job, very important job, by the way, was to actually color code each of the states and the time zones to make sure that, we weren't taking a lot of time to look to see that we were in compliance with what states we were calling. Because you still didn't want to call California at 8 o'clock in the morning when we're dialing from the East Coast. So, I kind of still remember the colors. Red was for the East Coast time zone, blue was for the Central, yellow was for the Mountain, and orange represented the Pacific time zone. So I would just take these highlighters and go like straight down the rows as fast as I could, making sure that I stopped at the proper states to color code so that they'd have an easy access to see who or what times when they were colored. My other really cool job, I remember, was I took a weekend. I'm 10, 11 years old. I don't know. I wonder if we even got paid for this. But we had a projector, an overhead projector that projected the map of the United States on the wall. And I remember taking one of those like sponge paintbrushes and actually just painting every single state and painting the United States on the wall. And then we had somebody come in. I didn't do that. Somebody came in and colored each of the states in that corresponded with the time zone, right? So you knew if you were dialing or if you had blue that you were in the central time zone, and these were the states that should be right in the central time zone. So kind of a little cool thing. I remember too the reps. We weren't calling cell phones. There's no such thing as cell phones. If they got a funny answering machine, they would pass their stickers around, right, and everybody would dial it and laugh and. Just probably, things that you would not do today at all. It's kind of funny. And again, yeses they would put on an application. Nos they would just mark an X. And then if they had a callback, they would just literally write callback at 9:30 tomorrow, and they would kind of take those off and put callback on their callback sheets. Kind of funny. I mean, how antiquated, but yet at the time, how cool we thought that system was. Many centers had different techniques for how scripting was done because this was a new thing, right? These paper scripts and how do you do them? A lot of people just laminated them and put them in booths, but we had a pretty cool system. I remember, our scripts were in flip books in each of the booths, so the associate could read the opening, then they could quickly flip to a rebuttal sheet or a disclosure when they needed. So instead of just kind of looking around or kind of randomly trying to look for what they needed to say, we would have like little tags and they would just flip right to that page for not interested or too expensive or kind of whatever the rebuttal was. So outbound was pretty straightforward. You had normal phones, you dialed them, everything was kind of a little bit more calm. Inbound was total wild west, at least for us. We didn't have a PBX. The multi-million-dollar organizations, had probably an Avaya, and Avaya didn't even exist, and so it was probably a Lucent or just an AT&T PBX at the time. But we didn't have that. We were just a contact center that was starting out. We're only a year or two old in 1985, so we we were using things like just basically daisy chains of POTS lines that would come in, and we would have a call center. I remember we had a call center of about 45 seats set up, and the calls would just come in and they would ring one phone to the next, to the next, to the next, all the way around the room. And that's kind of how they were set up. And while that's great and really not too bad, it's tough when, if a client sets something up where the hours of operation are a little bit different and phones are just ringing and nobody's there and they're just zooming around the room. That happens so many times where we just, panicked and had to sprint reps into the room to at least somewhat stem the bleeding of the calls that were coming in. We had no stats, right? At the time, we didn't know how many we were abandoning, what our average handle time. There was nothing other than a phone call was coming in and it needed to be answered. Service level was a foreign term at the time. I think that's one of the questions I'm going to ask when I hopefully go to heaven is, how many calls did we abandon in those early years? Really the only other stat we had, calls answered. We didn't even have calls offered. We had yes and no's, and that was probably, the most important thing for the client at the time. They didn't really care about actually servicing. They cared about sales. We didn't have a CRM. One of the things that we did from a CRM was we had customer files written down on index cards with important information and that we could update. So anytime that they called in, we would kind of talk, just write down a quick memo of why they called. So the next time they call, we would ask them, some customer information and try to pull that index card. And that was our really basic CRM, which I guess at the time worked. But wow, how frustrating must that have been for not only the customer, but just, for the associates as well. Kind of crazy. The other thing that I think has changed a lot in the industry too is fulfillment. And I know that there's still a lot of fulfillment centers, especially from a direct response standpoint when customers want information and they're sending packets out and sending some of, those type of informational things out. But, back then it wasn't so much information. It was the actual, program. It was the actual applications. It was the things that the customers, from a credit card standpoint, all of those applications every single day got filled out. We brought them to our fulfillment area. They got batched to make sure that they were sent to the proper bank, to make sure they were sent to the proper department. Think about how crazy that is now. You had a paper application with a ton of customer information, social security numbers. Some of these for first and second mortgage, for a refi, they had, their account information on them. Where they lived, they had everything on there, and we were just kind of, putting them into an envelope and mailing them. I guess that's probably why all those laws like PCI and SOC 2 and all those HIPAA laws have really come out. They were probably sorely needed. Especially, even the TCPA regs that were pretty loose at the time. But, fulfillment was really busy, to not only, handle all of the pressure-sensitive labels, but to print everything out, make sure that all the reps had applications. When they did get an application, making sure that it went to the right spot. Pretty intense and pretty crazy. I mean, we don't have I think we have, one or two people right now here at Expivia that do a little bit of fulfillment like 2 days a week. For a couple of clients, but that's kind of another thing that's changed. Let's talk about the actual call center atmosphere, because back in the 80s, we were still allowed to smoke in the call center. I mean, that seems like a really, really crazy concept now, but just like the airplanes, when you could smoke on an airplane and you could choose a smoking or non-smoking section, I remember we had the same thing in the call center, right? You could be on a smoking team or the smoking side of the room or the non-smoking side of the room, whatever that meant, right? Because you're still breathing all that stuff in. And I remember, a couple years later, dude, I said dude. I didn't mean to call all you guys dude, but I'm kind of getting into this. But I remember the burn holes that happened in the call center furniture and the booths and the chairs, just from the ashes and from cleaning all that stuff up and the burn marks in the floor and the carpet. Crazy that was just kind of the norm. A couple years after we started, we did ban smoking in the call center, and you would have thought there was a huge revolt that I remember happened. So we had a compromise of that they didn't have to go outside, but we would have a smoking room. So literally, I remember we had like this 14 by 14 square room with some type of little filter fan in the ceiling that would constantly go. And you couldn't see people in there. It was so smoky because everybody was so jammed in there. And again, this is Northwestern PA in the 80s. Everybody smoked. So, kind of funny from that aspect as well. Things that you wouldn't even, think about today. Cost was also another, kind of a neat thing to talk about. So, per minute cost, think about now with VoIP. I mean, a lot of this stuff is under a penny a minute. So it's super cheap compared to what it was. We were paying 15 to 16 cents a minute, back in 1985. We got a deal to go to like 7-8 cents from AT&T, and we thought we had a steal. 50% of our whole cost of our telephony was getting reduced. But we would get these boxes. I mean, you couldn't email anything. There was no internet at the time. So literally they would mail you these boxes of phone bills that would just take up almost the whole room because it's every single phone number that was dialed and how much it was charged for it. It was crazy. But here's the other thing that kind of, I've talked to a lot of colleagues about. The cost per hour is still about the same, for what we charge from an outsourcing side. Back then it was, in that $24, $25, $26 an hour range. Today it's, it's a little bit more, but it's in that $26. And while VoIP has gone down and the per minute charges have gone down, minimum wage in Pennsylvania was like $3.25. So, if we're paying our reps $5.50 or $6, you're not doing that anymore. We're more than double that. So, the prices, while they've, gone down in some areas, have, the labor cost has gone up, a lot. But it's really kept the prices about the same from 1985. And I don't think there's many industries that you could say that, really the cost for outsourcing has really stayed the same, which is, and maybe another reason to maybe look at some outsourcing. But anyway, really how quickly things change. The cloud was a pipe dream back then. The internet was something that maybe people were starting to, not, 95, nobody was even talking about the internet. Not a chance. I remember in college in 95, that's really when I first logged into to the AOL and really got kind of into the internet. But speech analytics, chatbots, those are things of science fiction. And now they're things that are, almost must-have for any type of contact center. So kind of an interesting kind of dive, I think, today. And again, I would love to hear some of the stories that you guys have of even if it's 10, 15 years ago, but going back as far as some of you can remember to some of the ways and some of the techniques that you had. I'm going to post this, the link to the podcast for this episode on the Advice from a Call Center Geek Facebook page. And again, please, I'd love to hear some feedback or some back and forth on some of the things that you guys have done and how your contact centers have evolved, throughout the time. I think that's pretty a kind of an interesting story. So I hope that's interesting. I thought that was kind of cool as I was, talking to people around here and really kind of reminiscing and thinking of the things that I did or that I saw, as I was just kind of starting my call center journey. So again, as I kind of wrap this up, I will be back in 2 weeks. I may be doing an episode next week. I've never done an interview on the podcast. But Paul Herdman, who is the head of global customer support for Nice in Contact, has agreed to kind of join me for a quick interview. I don't know if I'm a good interviewer or not, so I'm debating whether I'm going to have time to do that next week. But I'm going to try to do that. But if not, I will be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about technology and kind of the roadmap of where things are going in the next 18 to 24 months, which I think will be a really cool episode. But if you would please like and kind of be involved with some of our social media assets from our Advice from a Call Center Geek Twitter account, Instagram, Facebook page. Also, we're on LinkedIn. And there, as kind of my cheap plug that I always say, we have Advice from a Call Center Geek book that is on Amazon. It discusses a lot of these topics that we talk about here and kind of gives you a little bit of a workbook for some of your call center operations things. So again, I hope that was somewhat interesting. Those of you who maybe are flying out to Vegas for interactions, please stop by the booth. If you're kind of listening to this maybe on the plane, I got some bottle keepers for anybody who can tell me that they listened to this episode. And you can just say, hey, Tom, I listened the whole way through, and you said you'd give me a bottle keeper if I listened. Let's see how many I get. But again, thank you guys very much, and I will either talk to you next week or in 2 weeks. So have a great one, everyone.
This has been Advice from a Call Center Geek. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the show so you're the first to hear next week's episode. Jam-packed with actionable takeaways you can implement ASAP. Chime in with your thoughts on the episode on Twitter @from_geek and on Instagram @call_center_geek. Also, take a look at our contact center operations book by the same name, Advice from a Call Center Geek on Amazon. This podcast is sponsored by ExpiviaUSA.com.